kind of gives this, why she's proud, which is she hits the kind of, the greatest hits of the Democratic Party of the 20th century, basically, which, Roosevelt and Johnson and, Kennedy and Clinton, and with budget issues and things like that. And with every single one of those people, for more, better or worse, you can find really problematic parts of their presidency, right? Mm-hmm. But we still do have Social Security, and we still do have Medicaid, and we still do have Medicare. And there was a point at which we had actually maybe started to get fiscally right, so we could have done some of these big things that everybody wants to do, except we decided that Al Gore was boring. 5 justices on the Supreme Court decided that they wanted Friends to replace them and gave us a second Bush presidency. That ability to say, actually, we're working, no, I'm not going to argue that I'm going to fix everything in 4 years, but look at the arc of the party I'm coming out of. And we have, sometimes we've made a big step, sometimes we've made a little step, help me with this, the next stage and whatever we're going to try and do together. And I think that was something that she didn't, I think she made the mistake of, I don't know if it was a mistake, but she tried to kind of lean into an anti-establishment, and maybe her best bet would have been, despite the winds of the time, would have been to lean into the value of establishment politics to a certain extent. That it wasn't anti-establishment insurgency campaigns that got us some of the things we hold most dear in this country. It was people who have played the game for an awfully long time, right? Johnson knew how to work the Senate, and we got and that's that usage, his bullying tactics, were useful in getting things we wanted. And he was not an anti-establishment president by any stretch of the imagination.
And Bernie Sanders does not know how to work the Senate. He's been in the Senate for how long? And what meaningful legislation has he ever sponsored or passed? I love him in the Senate. I love having a gadfly. I love having somebody to just come out and just say the things you're thinking when you get frustrated with establishment politics. But one guy in the Senate is different than the president. And I really don't know that he would have gotten anything done, because I don't think he's that well liked. I don't think people like making coalitions with him that much. I think he's a grumpy old bastard, and I love him for it, but come on.
We're seeing right now what happens when you have a president who doesn't know how to work the Senate.
Right. Yeah. Or know how to staff an administration. I think those type of staffing issues, I think we can see, are not because Trump is a horrible person. People are more than willing to take a job with somebody who's just a, despicable human being, but not knowing the ins and outs of who to hire is a big problem. That the Obama administration hired way more people from the Clinton side than they ever thought they would, because turns out they needed people who knew how to work in government. And they did. They'd been there before, and they had a perspective and an experience that they could bring. Not knowing and not having those contacts in a party can just even if you have all the best intentions in the world, fortunately, you still have to hire a lot of people to get an executive branch up and running. And if you don't have those contacts, it's almost impossible.
So I'm going to jump around a little bit on our list of questions, because I want to sort of push this a little bit forward. And so let's talk about the future of the Democratic Party. So let's talk about both what Hillary lays out as the future of the party, but also what we think the future of the party should be. One of the most interesting things I saw in what Hillary was talking about, it wasn't the big thing she was talking about, but it jumped out at me, was she was talking about basically that the Democrats need their own media empire, the way the Republicans have with Fox News and Breitbart and Alex Jones. And of course, we would like to think that ours would be based in fact and, reality, but that we need this sort of always-on presence and content providers who can push our agenda forward and our views forward.
Yeah, I have to say that I found myself sort of about a lot of that, partly because, what I think we really need is just more really good news, really good news, and I want the good news to do newsy stuff. I don't want the New York Times to spend 7 billion page inches on Hillary Clinton's emails because they're clickbait, because in 2016, all you can do is create clickbait. And I just, I sort of, part of it, she was talking about we need people to make memes. It's okay, well, sure, but we actually, I mean, I don't have some shortage of liberal memes in my Facebook news feed. I don't know about you guys, but this is like not an issue for me. But I mean, I don't know. I'm just not sure. And especially now, since she wrote the book, and even like in the last couple of weeks, we know more and more that like, turns out a bunch of this stuff is coming from Russia. Turns out, like, I don't know that we need to like. I mean, I guess you do have to wage a propaganda campaign to some degree. It's sort of how this works. The line between propaganda and marketing is very slim. But I'm just not sure that we need a lefty media empire. I mean, we all see these memes from Occupy Democrats and whatnot. And I just don't think they're mostly that great.
I agree, and I had the same reaction. I think instead of like a left-wing Fox News, we more need like media literacy classes in every high school.
Yeah.
We need to teach people how to identify useful, trustworthy sources and use the information that those sources give them. Mm-hmm. And I do think there's hope in that. I have noticed that people in my generation, I'm a millennial, 32, and a little younger, do actually seem to be a little bit better at figuring this out. The people who have been spreading the most fake news on my Facebook have been older people from both political ends of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. I love some of my older relatives who are also Democrats, but they also tend to fall for fake leftist news too. So I think there's hope, but I think we need to, rather than putting all of our energy and time and money into the liberal equivalent of Breitbart, to be focusing more on, getting some media literacy classes in schools and in libraries and just out to the general public.
That's a good plug for the humanities.
Yes, I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
One thing, I mean, she's probably sort of oversimplifying a lot of, she probably herself doesn't have that good a handle on how to make best use of Twitter and such things. One thing the Pod Save America guys said recently that has stuck with me is the idea that Democrats aren't very good at staying sort of on message. So if you're on Twitter and somebody posts whatever, something political, all the right-wing people, all the people who are responding, all have like the exact same talking points that they're getting somewhere and they're on message. And so part of the reason the Hillary Clinton email thing stayed in the public consciousness so long is that like every response by a Republican to everything was, well, but her emails, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And that maybe we can get better at that part of it. And that's something that, I mean, Hillary herself says she was sort of had trouble staying on message because she had so many messages that she wanted to get across. And she second guesses toward the end of the campaign after the Comey letter if they should have given one message about, working families instead of the message they gave about whether Trump was the right person for the job. And, I think we should be thinking about that and thinking about that especially in how we deal with someone like Trump, who has so many things you could critique that, if you start every single thing with, well, not only is he a billionaire who wants to give tax cuts to millionaires and billionaires, but also, that sort of, maybe we don't need memes, maybe we don't reduce everything to talking points, but if we can sort of stay on a single message instead of being all over the place, it might be more effective. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to sound awful, and I sort of mean it in an awful way, so bear with me here. But I think, these sort of Republican talking points, the but her emails and so on, they're because people who are hardcore Trump fans are not really critical thinkers. And the problem with liberals is we're a bunch of like overly critical thinkers of the worst variety. And we think so hard. And so it's like, okay, you bring us an idea and, you have 5 liberals in a room and 17 opinions. Like, hold on, let's talk about every nuance of this. And I do think maybe, I don't know how to like, say like, all right, come on, smart people, here we go. We're gonna just say this simply. When we're talking to our aunts and our uncles on Facebook, don't, wow them with CBO scores, just make the simple message. But I don't know that that's actually like a reasonable thing. Like maybe we could just be unabashedly complex.
I mean, that was the part of the book that for me, I saw her point, right? That that you can see the benefit that that kind of perpetual presence, that always onness that a Fox News and a Breitbart give the right is useful. But not only is it icky to think about creating that on the left, I think the strength of being critical thinkers, right, as you were saying, is like that's how you're going to govern well, right? And you need the ability to kind of see nuance and see these different options once you win the election and actually have to govern, right? And you can see how problematic it is if you have no nuanced thoughts and you have no way of making an argument to try and win somebody over to your side. That really is problematic when you actually get to governing. And I think I worry that this would just be going down this line where we would have to have a way in which we campaign and a way in which we govern. And how are we going to create confidence and inspire, people to believe again in politicians and politics and governing if we're actually basically advocating for people to not govern and campaign in the same way? And I don't know that there's a good answer, to that, but it seems to me that it's almost like trying to drive the narrative of tell people what they want to hear, and then when you get in office, do what you think is right, even if it's not what you campaigned on almost. And that's the part I found compelling about Hillary Clinton's campaign, was that she was trying to tell you, this is what I think I can do, right? Like, not just what I think is right, but this is what I think I could actually accomplish, so that you could hold her accountable, so that we could try and, long term generate trust in the government, which is, and various institutions. And I'm not sure how being overly simplistic is going to help with that element. And that, I guess, this is a kind of, what chicken and egg kind of problem. You can't help generate trust in government if you don't have any authority in government. So that was a kind of long meandering thought that I have, but that is kind of where my worry is that the thing that is potentially causing problems under campaigning for campaigning purposes would seem to be what would be the strength of those people who might govern, which is messy, critical, nuanced thinking.
I think ironically, Bill Clinton was kind of the master of
Yes.
promise one thing and govern a very different way. I mean, Bill Clinton in office is very wonky, and Bill Clinton on the campaign trail is like your buddy Bill with
Right.
he's like
Right. He's Bubba.
Yeah, he totally is. And I actually think Obama was a little bit this way also. Obama he's a preacher. He comes out and he like gives these big booming voiced sermon style speeches, and then he gets in office and he's a nerd. And they're these two very different. And I think Hillary was on the campaign trail who she would have been in the office. And I don't know that people can actually, be sold a complex, nuanced set of policies. I'm just not sure that we're,
But in the end, both I think Bill Clinton and Obama had this problem of even if they had accomplished things, I think Obama probably the most, right, is that he actually accomplished an immense amount that nobody really thought lived up to his campaign rhetoric, right? Or not, or at least some people on both sides didn't think he lived up to his campaign rhetoric. And I think I personally find that to be an unfair assessment.
I agree.
If he had I don't know that he would have campaigned in a more prosaic manner, so again, you have to win the election in order to govern. But given how this deep-seated mistrust and of really all institutions, but especially of government, that I see that path forward as potentially exacerbating that problem rather than attempting to fix it. That being said, you can't fix it if you don't win. So
what about this question of sort of what the Democratic Party's priorities should be? I mean, Hillary seems to be saying, yes, we should think about working families. Yes, we should think about economic anxiety. Yes, also we should be thinking about clean energy. Yes, also we should be keeping committed to social justice and, rights of women and reproductive ethics and Black Lives Matter. And, she seems to be saying, yes, let's do everything. I mean, I'd feel that way too, but, is there a danger in sort of the Democratic Party concentrating on all of that stuff? Or is that is that the way we get into office and are able to accomplish all those goals?
Well, I don't think you can really get into office